It was a Wednesday afternoon, just another day in the shop. But for Wyatt, it felt different. The sound of an impact wrench echoed through the garage, the sharp, metallic noise filling the air. He wiped his hands on a rag, feeling the grease seep into the fabric of his shirt. Oil stains were a permanent mark on his uniform now, just like the frustration that often seemed to hang in the air at the shop. It had been like this for 3 years, ever since he started working at the auto repair place in a small town that no one ever really paid much attention to. Wyatt had always been quick with his hands. Fixing cars was second nature to him. But if you asked anyone around, they'd say he was just as quick with his temper, especially when it came to seeing something that wasn't right. That's the kind of guy. He was the kind of guy who didn't just shrug when someone was being taken advantage of. The bell over the door chimed, and in walked an elderly man, probably in his 70s, maybe more. He was dressed in clothes that had seen better days, his shoes scuffed and worn from years of use. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out a well-worn leather wallet, eyes flicking nervously between the counter and the workers. "I just need the belt replaced," the man said, his voice quiet but firm. "I know it's not a big job. I can pay some of it today, the rest next week." Wyatt's eyes flicked to Rick, the manager. Rick was a stocky man, built like a boulder, arms crossed as he leaned against the counter. "That's not how this works, old man," Rick growled, the words coming out like gravel. "We ain't a charity. Pay in full or go somewhere else." Wyatt felt his jaw tighten. He had worked here for long enough to know Rick wasn't the kind of guy to bend. But this wasn't right. The old man wasn't asking for a handout, just a little help. Before he could stop himself, Wyatt stepped forward, wiping his hands on his rag. "I'll do it," he said, voice steady but with an edge to it. The elderly man's eyes widened in surprise. "Son, I don't want you to get in trouble." Wyatt shook his head, already moving toward the car. "It's a 15-minute job. Don't worry about it." Rick's face darkened. "Wyatt, don't be stupid. You do this for free. You're paying for the part out of your own check." Wyatt didn't flinch. "Fine. Take it out of my check." Rick scoffed, but didn't say anything. He knew Wyatt. The kid was stubborn. And frankly, he didn't care enough to argue over a single belt. But it wasn't just the belt. It was the principle of it. It was everything about the way Rick ran the shop. Wyatt worked fast, fingers moving with practiced ease, replacing the belt in minutes. When he was done, he wiped his hands on his pants and turned to the old man. "You're good to go." The elderly man looked at him, his eyes a little misty. "Son, you didn't have to do that." Wyatt just shrugged. "Yeah, I did." The old man reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled $5 bill. "I know it's not much." But Wyatt didn't let him finish. He pushed the money back into the man's hand. "Just drive safe, all right?" The old man hesitated, then nodded, a little overwhelmed by the kindness. "Thank you," he muttered, before driving off, leaving behind a quiet feeling that seemed to linger in the shop for a long while. Wesley Owens had been watching the whole thing from the waiting area. He hadn't been seen, not yet. He was just another guy in a mechanic's uniform, a new hire, or maybe just another trainee trying to get his hands dirty. The truth was, Wesley wasn't just a mechanic. He wasn't even a new hire. He was the owner of the entire chain of auto repair shops, 6 locations in total. But no one knew that. He'd bought the business from an old friend years ago, trusting that it would run itself. But in the past year, complaints had started to roll in. Bad service, overpriced repairs, employees quitting without warning. Wesley had trusted his managers to run things while he stayed away, operating from a distance. But now, he was realizing just how much he'd been blind to. He'd gone undercover for the first time in 10 years. He was sitting there, just a fly on the wall, watching as one of his best mechanics, Wyatt, did the right thing, even though it cost him. As the day wore on, things didn't get better. A woman in her mid-30s pulled up in a beat-up SUV. She got out, keys clutched in her hand, looking uneasy. Wyatt wiped his hands on a rag and stepped forward. "Something wrong with the car?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It's making a weird noise when I turn. I just need a quick check." Before Wyatt could answer, Rick appeared, walking up to the woman and cutting him off. "Inspection's gonna be $80, lady. Non-refundable." Wyatt frowned, but didn't speak up yet. The woman looked flustered. $80 just to look at it? Her voice was full of disbelief. Rick shrugged. "That's shop policy." Wyatt's got twisted. The woman was clearly struggling, debating whether she could afford it. But before Wyatt could step in, Rick just stood there, arms crossed, cold as ever. Wesley watched closely from the side, his jaw tightening as he felt the tension rise. The woman sighed, defeated. All right, I need to know what's wrong. Rick motioned to Wyatt. Take care of it. And then, like it was no big deal, he turned away and walked off. Wyatt popped the hood of her SUV and started listening for the noise. A few minutes later, he stepped out, wiping his hands on his pants. Your power steering fluid's low. That's what's causing the noise. She let out a relieved breath. Oh, that's all. She looked up at him, visibly relaxed. Yeah, Wyatt said. I can top it off for you right now. Shouldn't take more than a minute. Before he could grab the fluid, Rick's voice cut through the air like a knife. That'll be a full power steering flush. $150. Wyatt turned sharply. She doesn't need a full flush. Just a top off. Rick's eyes darkened. That's not your call, Wyatt. The woman shifted nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the tension building in the air. Wyatt clenched his fists at his sides, but didn't back down. Go to the auto parts store down the street, he said to the woman, his voice calm but firm. Buy a bottle of fluid. It'll cost you $5. You can do it yourself. Rick's face twisted. Are you serious right now? Wyatt didn't even look at him. That's all you need, he told the woman. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The woman's eyes softened, and she gave him a grateful look. Thank you, she whispered, before quickly leaving the shop. As soon as she was gone, Rick turned on Wyatt. You trying to cost us money? I'm trying to be honest, Wyatt shot back, his voice just as cold as Rick's. Rick chuckled, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. Honest doesn't pay the bills. It should, Wyatt muttered under his breath. Rick stepped closer, lowering his voice. You keep pulling stunts like that, and you won't be working here much longer. Wyatt held his ground, but Wesley could see the tension in his shoulders. Wyatt was fighting a battle he shouldn't have to fight. Wesley stood up, dusting off his hands. Something wrong? He asked casually, walking toward them. Rick barely spared him a glance. Nah, just setting the kid straight. Wyatt wanted to argue, but he didn't. Wesley turned to him. You always this honest with customers? Wyatt hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Wesley gave him a thoughtful look. Good. Rick snorted. Yeah, and who are you to say what's good? Wesley's mouth twitched up into a small smirk. You'll find out soon enough. Rick didn't respond, but his face tightened, and he muttered under his breath as he walked off. Wyatt looked back at Wesley, clearly trying to make sense of what had just happened. You new here? Something like that, Wesley said with a shrug. Wyatt gave him a long look. You really own this place? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Wesley nodded, and there was a long pause before Wyatt asked, So why'd you wait until now to see what was happening? Wesley didn't flinch. I trusted the wrong people to run things, he admitted. Figured if the numbers looked good, everything else was fine. Wyatt frowned, understanding. Yeah, well, the numbers looked good, 'cause Rick was squeezing every penny out of people, whether they needed the work or not. Wesley nodded, the weight of the realization settling on him. Exactly. He let the silence stretch for a moment before turning to Wyatt. You ever run a shop before? Wyatt shook his head. No, but I know how things should be run. Wesley smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That's a start. You're not going to be in this alone. You'll have the support you need. Wyatt stared at him for a long moment before nodding slowly. All right then. By the end of the day, the shop had changed. Wyatt was now a man with a heavy responsibility, one he hadn't asked for, but one he was going to take on with integrity. Wesley knew this wasn't the last time he was going to walk into one of his shops unannounced. Things were about to get a whole lot different. The next morning, Wyatt walked into the shop with a sense of purpose. The place felt different. The air was thick with change. Wesley was already there, clipboard in hand. Wyatt pulled his jacket tighter against the cold and walked toward him. You sleep at all? Wesley asked. Not really, Wyatt admitted. Wesley nodded. Figured. A lot happened yesterday. Wyatt shoved his hands into his pockets. So what now? We fix things, Wesley said, tapping the clipboard. We pull the records. If people paid for work they didn't get, they're getting their money back. Wyatt exhaled sharply. That's going to cost a fortune. Wesley didn't flinch. It's the cost of doing the right thing. Wyatt looked around the shop as the others started trickling in. There was a nervous energy in the air. The news of Rick's firing had spread fast. Wesley called everyone together. The message was clear. No more cutting corners, No more dishonest practices. Wyatt stood beside him, taking it all in. You think they'll actually speak up? He asked. Some will, Wesley said. The rest will wait and see if we mean it. Wyatt glanced at the clipboard in Wesley's hand. Do we? Wesley looked him in the eye. Yeah, we do. All right then, Wyatt said, rolling his shoulders as if settling into a new role. Let's get to work. As the day went on, the shop felt different. Wyatt was in charge now, and with Wesley by his side, they were ready to make sure things changed for good. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing meant losing your job or standing up to the wrong kind of authority? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about what's fair, what's right, and what happens when people in charge just don't care anymore.